is a beautiful noise. If someone says F1, that's probably the sound you think of. In the modern day though, they sound like this. Now, it's not too bad, I suppose, but when the Formula 3 cars are actually louder, you know there's probably a bit of a problem with the sound of Formula 1. So why can't we just have the V10s back? The environment. Turns out this green stuff is pretty important. And about 30 years ago, everyone found that out. Around 10 years ago, everyone actually started to care. Formula 1 was pretty much the same. At the start of the environmentalist movement, nothing really changed. Engines would remain as roaring V10s, and fuel was nothing but a plaything for the teams. However, the longer the year began with a 2000, the less fun Formula 1 was allowed to have. First, they came for the engines. Bye-bye V10, hello V8. Then they would take our refueling. Never again would we see Felipe Massa 2008. And finally, they took our engines. Again. Goodbye V8s, hello V6 turbo hybrids. So yes, the new engines were even more efficient. The cars could not only run on a whole tank of fuel for an entire race, but some of it was even electrical power and not combustion power. But it all made sense in terms of the environment, and soon even more advancements would come in. Not only will 2026's cars be 50% combustion and 50% electrical, an even bigger swing on electric than we have now, but they'll also use synthetic fuels, which work in normal combustion engines and are therefore completely carbon neutral. But wait a second, are you hearing that right? We have synthetic carbon neutral fuels. So does that mean we could just bring back the V10s, as it no longer causes an environmental issue by burning fossil fuels? Well, I wouldn't count on it. But okay, why would we even want them back in the first place, bar just the noise? In 1989, Formula 1's engine regulations changed to this time allow a 3.5-litre engine, and teams will be able to run V8, V10, or V12 configurations. The common choice was to run the V10s, as they offered the best balance between weight and power. That's not to say there wasn't outliers, like Ferrari running a V12 in 1995 to reasonable success. The V10's power output, though, would steadily increase throughout their time in Formula 1, starting off at around 600 horsepower and ending up with over 900 horsepower by the end of their life, in some of the fastest Formula 1 cars we've ever seen. And part of the reason people love the V10s so much is because of those cars they're associated with. Senna's McLaren MP45, powered by an amazing Honda V10 that led him to championship success, and into the side of Alain Prost. Williams' Renault V10, which won them 6 Constructors' World titles. The sound and the look that can be associated with Williams' domination, and things like Mansell winning the British Grand Prix. And who can forget the 2000s, with Michael Schumacher and Ferrari's dominance. The 900 horsepower monster that was the F2004 shares the sound of this era, a time when Formula 1 was seeing drivers that were capable of doing things no one knew were possible. For many, the V10s are not just an engine, but they're the sound and look of an era in Formula 1, a time with many top-level drivers like Prost, Senna, Schumacher, and even Alonso. And they were all in their primes, fighting each other for victory. There's a great sense of pride in the F1 community about what these engines provided. The thing is, it's not just deep-rooted nostalgia that is why the V10s were so popular. It was also the cars the teams could build with them, and the racing those cars provided. Why are F1 cars so big right now? You might tell me it's to do with how far the safety has come. The halo and incredibly secure monocoque center certainly do add weight. But one of the largest areas of weight is the electrical motor. Having a hybrid engine does just add so much to the car. You're essentially running with 2 engines instead of 1. I know it's not completely like that, but you get the idea. And that also takes up a hell of a lot of space. That's why the cars resemble something more like a speedboat nowadays. So there's your other reason fans loved the V10s. They provided all of the insane Formula 1 power at a much smaller cost in terms of space. If we brought them back, we could once again have the small and more nimble F1 cars similar to that of the 2000s and early 2010s. The drivers could race side by side, not just through a couple corners of each track, but throughout the entirety of the racetrack, which would certainly be much more interesting racing. But from the sounds of things, bringing back the V10s is a win-win for Formula 1. No longer are they burdened by the environmental costs they once were, and will provide better, more exciting, and much more noise-appealing racing to the fans. So why won't they just bring it back? It's all to do with business. Formula 1 is a reflection of the motoring world. At the end of the day, the ultimate goal of Formula 1 is not to win races or championships or even anything to do with racing at all. It's to create technologies that can be implemented and sold in the motoring space. And what's the biggest trend in motoring been for the last decade? Lightweight, high-powered sports cars? No. Big electric and hybrid vehicles. And that's therefore the path Formula 1 has to follow in order to still appeal to its engine manufacturers. You see, it's all good us wanting a V10, but does Mercedes, does Honda, does Renault want a V10 too? Well, let's take a look. Renault currently produces 0 V10 engines. Mercedes currently produces 0 V10 engines. Honda currently produces 0 V10 engines. Even Ferrari has never produced a road car with a V10 engine. In fact, the only one that came close recently was surprisingly Honda, who scrapped a V10 NSX a few years ago and instead created a V8 car for Super GT. At the end of the day, it's simple economics. The demand does not match the supply. None of these engine manufacturers are remotely interested in V10 engines. And sadly, it doesn't really matter what the fans want. We can't always get it. But okay, what if hypothetically Formula 1 did bring back the V10 engines? How would the manufacturers react? Because, to be honest, I'm not sure it would make much of a difference to these teams. I mean, you're guaranteed to have Ferrari no matter what. Renault are rumored to be leaving the sport anyway. Honda can never seem to decide whether they want to compete or not, even if the engines were made out of cheese. And are Mercedes really going to give up on the success their engines have seen over multiple years and multiple teams? Plus, it seems like General Motors are keen to get stuck into Formula 1 no matter what. Same with Audi. So maybe, despite this need F1 feels to be technologically relevant, it wouldn't actually be that detrimental to their bottom line, especially considering how popular the sport has now become. F1 definitely holds a lot more of the cards at the moment, with just how much brand awareness and how many eyes are on the sport. That alone can be appealing to the teams. However, until you can convince F1 to make these changes and that the teams won't react poorly, the pursuit of being technologically relevant is what stops F1 from bringing back the V10s. If you laughed, learned, or just enjoyed the story, please consider hitting the subscribe button. There'll be a lot more F1 content on the way, and a huge thank you to my channel members who do support these videos. I massively appreciate it. Goodbye!